Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, as you can see already on the stream, we're doing a tier list.
Tier list.
Yeah, we need it. It's just tangent, but for tier lists. But for tier lists.
We have another button that Mo made for us, by the way. We need to use that.
Oh, I don't have.
I missed it. Yeah, I'm not ready. I don't even know why I brought this up. This isn't good podcasting, but it's fine. Mo made another sound drop for us.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I lost my voice a little bit. We're gonna be fine. So we are tier listing the worst games, but we're not tier listing them based on gameplay. That doesn't matter.
No, we're not tier listing them based on how they are as games.
No, because they're already been considered bad gameplay wise.
Yeah,
we are tier listing them solely on how we feel about them, whether the story we find moving, because some of these have cool stories, right, about why they're bad.
Yes, yeah. And I don't mean story in the game. I mean story of the game.
Yeah, like development of the game and story development. And then some of these are just ones we thought of that were like, this is bad, and we're just going to throw it on the list because we might even judge some of these on their cover. Are they aesthetically pleasing? We might do that. Who knows?
That's true.
So if you're like, oh, I'm looking for a deep dive into the gameplay reasons why these games are bad, you have come to the wrong place.
That is
you
correct.
Should stop
you should
listening.
be looking up videos on YouTube.
Exactly. You should watch a long play of these games. So I think on this list, I've only played 2 of these games. So
I have not played all of these games either because, again, it's not about the game.
No,
it's about the story of the game.
It's about the memories we make along the way. So where do we want to start?
Well, the first one on our list here is Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tyler, Sonic the Hedgehog, that's a beloved classic, loved by children and adults around the world, all of whom had Sega Genesis as a kid. I'm not talking about that game. I'm talking about the 2006 classic Sonic the Hedgehog for the Xbox 360.
Ooh.
And PlayStation 3.
So this was like the redone, the revamping of it, kind of.
Yeah, reboot is maybe not the right word because I don't think it like starts over the story of Sonic. However, flimsy that storyline is anyway. But it was kind of meant to be like, this is the next gen Sonic game. This is a new Sonic game. You are supposed to think of this as like a new beginning for the franchise. And it has like pre-rendered cinematics, and it tries to have like this really epic, overly done storyline. Sonic falls in love with a human person, and it's a whole thing. The problem is, game's bad, story's bad, gameplay is bad, buggy, like just not fun. Like it's not even funny. It's just bad, and it's immediately apparent if you've ever like fired this game up from the first thing that you do, like the opening area where you start is this like little sort of hub world. It's got nothing in it. It doesn't feel like Sonic because Sonic is not, well, I mean, I guess Sonic Adventure, the first one kind of had a hub world thing going on there, but this is just, it's just bad. And it just, yeah. And I think it's funny because of how just beloved Sonic is, that they can even make bad games in that series. Like I look to like Mario and Zelda as games that like, sure, some games are better than others, but none of them are bad, right?
Yeah.
This one is bad. Like almost unplayable, like it does not function bad.
Also, the story of it is just kind of boring of them trying to make just like, let's make a new Sonic game and let's make it like 3D and like match with the times. And they just goofed it. And there's no real like cool story behind it. This is honestly a C or a D for me. That's how I feel.
I'm going to go with you on this one. Let's start it off with a C tier.
Mm-hmm.
And we reserve the right to move these around as the day goes on.
Perfect.
But we'll start off with a nice middle of the road C tier, just because it's so beloved. Sonic as a character and franchise is so beloved, but this game was so bad that I think that puts it squarely in the middle of the road.
Okay.
So for our next game, I actually have 2 versions to put on here. We'll just put them in the same spot because it doesn't actually matter. But I want to talk about Duke Nukem Forever.
Ooh, I have opinions. So this game is the notorious development hell game. This game was developed over a decade, and it just didn't, and things were promised that didn't show up. The gameplay is actually, because Tyler and I both played this for the episode we did on Duke Nukem Forever, I didn't find the gameplay to be bad. I just found it to be extremely repetitive and boring. Like that's kind of what it was.
It's not good, and especially for a game that was in development for so long, it feels like this is a game that they just sort of they pushed out at the end because it was just time to be done with it.
Yeah, we're like, we need to be done with this game. But I think the story and the hype and the ups and downs of people like getting their hopes up and like having it fall short makes it better than Sonic in a way, as far as a tier list goes. Like the hype to the failure makes it go up in our list. So I would put this as a B or an A in my mind.
We'll throw it in the B tier. I have both. I have the
Here.
Xbox 360 cover and then like the original cover when it was, I guess, when it was announced.
Like
it was
the one
announced in like
promised.
1997, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it came out in 2012.
2012, yeah. So it was almost 15 years, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I put it above Sonic because it took so long in development, and it was, I don't want to say it was hyped, because I don't think anybody at any point in this game's development was looking at it going, wow, this is going to be the greatest game ever made. But the end product was like not bad. You know, if they just sort of pushed this out after like a year of development and they've been like, it's a new Duke Nukem game, people would have been like, cool, thumbs up. Game is a game, I guess. And then we would have moved on. But it's because it took so long and then was just not, it was just mediocre. Right?
Yeah. Also, there was a leak, I want to say like a year or two ago, that showed a version of the game before Duke Nukem Forever, like that we know it, and how much better it was or what they were trying to do. And so like that's it, it's just one of those games where the story of its development has become like a legend in itself and has made it more exciting for people, that it makes me happy. Like when someone's like, oh, Duke Nukem Forever, like my ears perk up, because I'm like, we talking about it? We talking about how weird this thing was and how it failed, because that's the kind of story I'm into, you know?
Yeah.
And some of these games on the, like we're going to talk about too, are just so synonymously bad that they've made like a culture around them. And that's kind of fun for me. So that's what I'm excited about. And then some will have redemption arcs that we'll talk about. That's kind of cool.
True. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Duke Nukem Forever. I wonder if there's anybody who worked on that project from start to finish, or if it's just like a whole different set of people by the time it got to the end, you know?
That's a good question. I'm surprised they haven't. Have they done a no clip about it?
I'm not sure. They should.
That would be a really good no clip. How many people they have to talk to, though?
Yeah. Because it took so long to make, and one of the reasons it had so much trouble was that they kept like changing it, because it took so long to make, the technology that it was being made on was being surpassed, and they were like switching to new stuff as newer technology came out, which meant they had to throw a lot of old work away. So what we ended up getting in the end was not a game that had been in development for 15 years. It was a game that probably had been in development for 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But all of the stuff from before had just been thrown away. So
100%. Yeah. It's one of those games where I just get excited to talk to people about it, because it was it is the quintessential story of the hype gone wrong. Well, there's another one on here that might be that, now that I'm looking at it, which should be censored for our watchers out there. They can't see our stuff. So this is me calling myself out to make sure I did that step.
Yeah, otherwise you can get spoilers.
So all right, that feels pretty good about Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
What's the next one you got on here?
Next one on the list, a classic bad game. We've all heard of it. We all know about it. Pac-Man. But not the original Pac-Man, of course. This is Pac-Man for the Atari 2600.
Now, if I recall, this is just a story of a port gone bad, right? That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. They were not given very much time to make this port. The person who was put in charge of it, who was just one person, as far as I know, it was one person who was like, hey, you got like 4 months to make a Pac-Man game. And so they pushed out a Pac-Man game that is, it looks like Pac-Man if you squint at it, like you can tell that's what they were going for. But the Atari 2600 was not a very powerful machine in its day. It could not stand up to the arcade machines at the time. But they wanted to cash in on the Pac-Man craze, because the arcades of Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, those games were doing great in arcades. So they wanted the home console version. Buy an Atari so you can play the arcade at home, right? This is like sort of the first time that happened, which was a big thing throughout the 80s and early 90s, was like, bring the arcade home, you know?
Is this the We Have Pac-Man at Home version of Pac-Man?
This is literally the We Have Pac-Man at Home version of Pac-Man. That's right. Yeah.
I because it's a port gone wrong, and that's like a little bit of a tale as old as time. Like that happens a lot in video games, right? Yeah. Where one version of it is not as good as the other version. I don't want to rank it that high. I want to throw it in the D or F tier.
Okay. Throw it in the D tier.
Let's throw it in the D tier. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what's the next one on this list? I can't recognize it by looking at the cover. It's a little small. What is that one?
This is Bomberman Act Zero for the Xbox 360. Another game sort of in the same vein as Sonic the Hedgehog, a beloved franchise, beloved characters sort of being rebooted for the modern like gritty times of 2005, 2006. I want to say this game was like 2007, 2008. And it is Bomberman, but it's like a really weird, grimdark, gritty version of Bomberman, not the cartoony, fun version.
That's right. I'm looking at this cover now, and I'm like, okay, this is what I remembered. I wonder. I'm gonna look up this game on price charting because I'm curious. I'm always curious how much because bad games can go either way. They can go really expensive because they're so famous for being bad, or they can go really cheap. So yeah, I remember this look. He looks so weird. This Bomberman looks so not cute at all.
Yeah, it's they were definitely like trying to make this like a reboot gritty version of Bomberman, which is not really what that character was. But also the game's bad. Like the game's just not fun. It's just not a very good game. Which is why it ends up on this list. I remember like kind of wanting this game when I saw it because I love Bomberman.
Me too.
I love Bomberman 64 also. I understand that that's not a very good game, but I was a small child and everything's good when you're a small child. So I really love that game. I spent a lot of time playing that game. How long to beat has Bomberman 64 at like 3 hours to finish? And I probably spent dozens of hours playing that game. I never finished it as a kid.
Dude, that's how they got you as a little kid is they were like, they made those games. They shouldn't be very long like now, but as a kid, you're like, this is so intense, you know?
Yeah.
Pokemon must have felt like forever, you know. Now
is a decently long game. Like
that's a 20
or 30 hour game.
Yeah, but I mean, it feels like forever when you're a little kid. You're like, but also I would play it over and over and over again. Like I delete my save and just play a new save. You know, I was that kind of kid. By the way, Bomberman Act Zero for the just Xbox 360 version, not any other region, just the North American region, is $9.95. Not that bad. You know,
I think they made a lot of them, and it wasn't famously bad. It's really just one that sticks out to me. Because I remember kind of being excited for it and then hearing it was really, really bad. So I'm gonna put it in the F tier because it's not that special.
It's not that special. Like the look of Bomberman is the most jarring part about it, I would say. So that's why it's in this list with us here today. But yeah, it's our first F tier. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, next one on the list, a bit of a redemption story. I want to talk about Cyberpunk 2079.
Okay. Wait, 2077?
Sorry, 2077. 2079.
I was like,
just kidding. There's no
I was like, wait a second. Wait, 2077? Yeah. So this is the one of the big redemption arcs of a modern day, I would say.
Yeah.
And I never played it because I was so concerned with the hype machine that I did not get into it when it was bad. And it was like, I would describe it as criminally bad to people. It was not functioning on certain consoles. And I think there wasn't even an Xbox. Was there even an there wasn't, it was like an Xbox One version was so messed up that like, why did you sell this? One of the versions of the game was so messed up, it was like unplayable, and it resulted in all these returns because
the previous gen version, the Xbox One and PS4 versions were even still today, I think they're like not great. The game itself was just extremely buggy when it came out. Like just stuff didn't work in it. It you could look at it and see that there was something cool here, but it just wasn't very functional. The game wasn't very well balanced. Like it really just needed a few more years in the oven. And I think the previous gen version, the PS4 and the Xbox One editions of this game had all of those problems of the game not being super great, but then also they ran like trash because it was too much for them and the game wasn't very well optimized. I don't know if that's still the case with those previous gen versions of it. I'm sure it's better now. But there were a lot of people who were just like, you guys shouldn't have even put this out. You should have just been a PS5 and Xbox Series game because it was just like, it even ran poorly on those consoles. And so how could the previous gen ever be able to run it?
Now it runs great on PC. I hear it's a great game.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this storyline here is because like when it came out again, you could tell that there was something fun here, but it just wasn't done yet. It was too buggy. The game wasn't very well balanced, and it just felt like maybe this needs a couple more years. And over the next few years, they put out a lot of updates for this game, brand new free updates for this game that got it to a place where it's actually pretty good now. And then right before the expansion pack, Phantom Liberty came out, they put out a big update for it that sort of overhauled a lot of the systems that rebalanced the game and just made it more fun. And so for that reason, I kind of want to put it in the A tier because I really like.
I agree. I was gonna say it's not S tier for me, but it's A tier for me because we love a good redemption arc on this podcast. We really do.
And nowadays the game is actually legitimately good. And one other game that's not on this list that you could say the same thing about is No Man's Sky, because when that came out, it was
that's a
kind of a
great one.
disappointment. It wasn't quite a disappointment to the same level Cyberpunk was, because like the game worked, it just didn't have a lot of the things that were sort of promised. It was kind of overhyped and then failed to deliver. But they still put out free updates for that, and it's gotten a lot better. And if you play it now for what it is, it's pretty cool.
There's some diehard fans of No Man's Sky. That's definitely a game that people love. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, what is our next one on here? It's one that I have heard of, but I'm not super familiar with, but I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, I'm gonna group kind of 3 of these games together. We're gonna talk about the Nintendo games for the Philips CDI system. Back in the day, in the like early 90s, like a 90 to 93 time period, CDs were becoming this like, oh, the next medium that games were going to be on, because you could have video, full motion video and stuff like that. And famously, Nintendo had partnered with Sony to make the PlayStation, and then sort of, we've covered this on the podcast before, but then sort of like basically showed up to the dance with someone else, and that someone else was Philips. And they made a CD peripheral with Philips, or not peripheral, console with Philips. That didn't go over very well. It was not very good. The console itself, but part of the deal that Nintendo made with Philips was that they would get to make a few games that were licensed from Nintendo. So we got 3 games, maybe more, but we got 3 games out of that I'm aware of. We got Hotel Mario, which is just not good, and I've never played it, so I don't need to dive into why it's bad. We also got Link and I can't read that. There's the Wand of Gamelon and then Faces of Evil. One of them is Zelda, one of them is Link. I can't read it from here. Famously bad. But they did have some full motion video stuff in them that the CD hardware could do, and they were like really poorly animated cartoons with some funny quotes in them.
Those are like internet meme.
Yeah,
they're like that's that. In that sense, the internet memes that were made by the Zelda CDI games make me want to put the Zelda ones in like the C tier, but I want to throw Hotel Mario in the D tier. That's how I kind of feel.
Hotel Mario goes to the D tier. And then, the CDI Zelda games. There's not much more to the story other than it's just funny that Philips somehow in their dealings with Nintendo got the ability to make these games, which Nintendo never does, right? Like they never license their stuff out to other companies to make games for, unless it's a game, it will be published by Nintendo and they will have like a lot of creative control over it. Because like other developers have made Mario games, especially like the Mario RPG series, Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario and stuff like that. Other companies develop those games, but they are overseen by Nintendo and they hold very strict creative control over that stuff. And I would argue that is for the best. Like they don't put out bad games. They put out really great games and then pretty good games, right?
Yeah.
As a result of that strategy. But they did not have that control over what Philips did with these games. And so this is why they have that control, is because they can keep bad stuff like this from happening. So we put Hotel Mario in the D tier. You want to put the Zelda games in the C tier just because the memes are funny?
Yeah, because they have funny memes, but they're not much more than that. I think the memes are kind of what they are.
Yeah, Hotel Mario does have a mini game in. I think it's the first Mario Party game. It's a Hotel Mario mini game where you kind of do sort of what that game is, but in Mario Party mini game form. Not a lot of people know that, I don't think, but it is sort of a reference.
Well, there's your fun trivia fact of the episode.
Yeah. Okay, next on the list, I just threw this in here because it's sort of topical, sort of relevant to the times. But Suicide Squad killed the Justice League.
Ooh, I think this is an important bad game, because I think this game, and in some essence, Skull and Bones, which came out this year, are 2 stunning examples of live service games that no one wanted, and that's why they're bad. I think that these 2, like Skull and Bones is the other example of it from this year, but that's really like what these are: hyped up games that turned out to just be like blatant live service money grabs that no one liked. It's important for history. I think it's going to be something we look back on when it's like, we should make a game like this. And then I hope some developer in some room is going to be like, remember Suicide Squad? You know, like just try to like that's why they're important. So I don't want to put it in the F tier, but I want to put it in the D tier, because still the story's not great of like how it was made. It's just a shining example of how everyone's trying to make things live service now, and it didn't work out.
Yeah. I think the really sad thing about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League in particular is that the developer of this game, Rocksteady, is known for just oops all bangers, right? The Arkham Asylum Arkham City, Arkham Knight, all three of those Batman games are phenomenal. They changed the way that superhero games are done today, right? Like if you play the Spider-Man games today and you like those games, they owe a lot to the Arkham series, right? So everybody was really excited for this next game from Rocksteady, and it was in the DC universe. So we were like, great, are we going to get some kind of cool like Rocksteady superhero game? And we didn't. We got a looter shooter with characters who are using guns that shouldn't use guns.
Exactly.
Like, that's all it is a looter shooter.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it just reeks of like live service cash grab. It's sort of like back in like the early mid 2000s when everything wanted to be an MMO. Mm-hmm. And there were just a lot of games that were more or less World of Warcraft ripoffs that came out that just fell flat on their face because like, why would I play this World of Warcraft ripoff when I can just play World of Warcraft? And Suicide Squad feels like that. Like somebody said, we need a live service game. Let's do it with Suicide Squad and let's get a good developer to make it. They go, okay. It's like sort of like a weird recipe that they thought that they like, here's a recipe for tons of money. You know what's making a lot of money right now? Live service games. You know what's also making a lot of money right now? Superhero stuff. So let's make a live service superhero game. Great. Oh, but you know what? The game's got to be good, right? Let's get a good developer to make it. And WB goes, well, who do we know that's a good developer? Rocksteady's a good developer. They made all these other great superhero games, right? So you put all these things together and you go, this has got to be it. Make us a live service game with a DC property. And you guys are the secret sauce and you're really good at making games. So it's just going to print money.
Turn on the money printer.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
But it didn't work out because it was a solution in search of a problem.
100%. And I don't think it should rank high because of that.
Yes, I agree.
I don't want to do anything to encourage this kind of behavior is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I don't think there's going to be a redemption story here. It seems like they've sort of like they're doing their season of stuff that they already had planned for it. And it kind of sounds like they're just
you know what's another good example of this? Anthem.
Yeah. Anthem's the same exact thing.
And Anthem was like 5 or 6 years ago now. And it's really weird how we see it like the same cycle going on of this of like everyone. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a fan of Destiny, but this Destiny has some success and then everyone was kind of trying to emulate it. And not because I think Destiny took off from like where MMOs were successful, right? To make this first person shooter live service game. It's not quite an MMO, but has MMO tendencies, right? And then everyone kind of was jumping off that platform to try to make something. And so, yeah, Anthem is a good example of this as well.
It's that same recipe of we need a live service game. We don't, the IP thing, they're like, let's make our own IP because then we'll own it. We'll make all the money from it, right? This is EA, of course. So this is our own IP. And then throw a good developer at it. You know who makes good games that we own? BioWare. They make good games. Can't go wrong.
I'm not happy with these these publishing companies ruining great studios to make terrible games like this for them. I'm not a fan.
And that's sort of EA's
and
MO.
They're gonna blame the developers and not they're not gonna. Well, no one wanted to play it because you didn't make a good game. No, that's not it. That's not it. It's because you're trying to add a microtransaction every 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn doesn't need a new gun. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that
we got off our soapbox now. We're good.
Yep.
I feel better.
D tier, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League.
This next one though is would it be your pick of the list? Maybe potentially.
I love this one because of just the sheer hubris involved, the sheer like bravado, not unearned bravado either. Like this was not somebody who hadn't earned that. But what I want to talk about next is the John Romero classic, Daikatana.
Oh gosh, this is a good one. It's a good one.
Hyped up. So John Romero is one of the genius minds behind the Doom games, Quake games, Heretic and Hexen, like basically anything id put out kind of in the 90s that was good. John Romero was a big part of. And he left id to go work at Ion Storm. And they made
his own studio. He made his own, right? He split off.
And that studio has made some okay games as well. I believe the original Deus Ex is in there, which is a phenomenal game, well loved by many around the world. But when Daikatana was being promoted in 1997, 1998, this is a Nintendo 64 game and PC. it was so heavily hyped up as like the next great thing from the genius mind of John Romero, and the style of the game was very much sort of in the same kind of style of the id games of like, you know, run around, kill stuff, like this is very like heavy masculine energy, lots of bravado, and they took out a full page ad in gaming magazines that we're gonna have to maybe censor ourselves here, but that just said it was for Daikatana, and it just said John Romero's about to make you his
B word,
which is hilarious to me because then the game came out and it was bad and no one liked it, and it did not make anybody's B word, and it's just really
it's like when a company now makes a tweet that's like really like confident, like this is gonna be the tweet, and then it just lands so poorly. It's like that, but in video games. And yeah, it's a beautiful story of hubris, a tale of hubris.
Yes.
So where do you want it, Tyler? Where do you want it on our list?
I want to put it. I want to put it at the S tier.
It's a rhetorical question. Let's put it up at the S tier. Let's do it.
Just because of the hubris involved. I love this. I just love that story so much.
It's a great story.
It's just not good. And John Romero hasn't really done a whole lot since then that's like been big and out and known. He made Sigil a few years ago, which was like kind of in the same vein as the original Doom games. But he actually works on a lot of like mobile games now. He still makes a lot of games.
He does.
And he made a lot of games before he worked at id too. He was one of those guys in the 80s doing shareware stuff, just like making games, putting them on the floppies and putting them in stores and like just making tons and tons of games.
I think you got to give it to him because it's the love of the game. I feel like for him, you know, like he is making games. I think he just made a game like last year that we got like a mobster game, I want to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if it was well received, but it came out last year, I think. So.
I don't think he's done anything quite as culturally relevant as Doom or Quake or any of those games since. But yeah, I don't mean to speak poorly of the folks who have made some legendary games. I'm not trying to do that. It's just I just think this one's so funny because it was not a great game and the ad was pretty funny.
Yeah, the confidence of it all was fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't know if he had anything to do with that ad. I can imagine that was a marketing person came in and was like, "Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna hype this thing up so much," and they like high-fived when they thought of this idea, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Or maybe he didn't have any say in it at all because he didn't, he's just making the game. He wasn't. I don't know how involved in the marketing he was, but. Yeah, I just think it's funny. And I think at this point he can laugh about it. He was maybe sore about it for a while, but now he can laugh about it, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, next on the list though, another famous bad game. We don't have to talk about it too much, but Big Rigs, a trucking game.
Oh yeah, this is like a big this one is like just known as being like this might have the lowest Metacritic score. I think is that what this one's famous for? I think.
Yeah, maybe.
This one has like an 8% on Metacritic. If I'm thinking of the right Big Rig game.
Big Rigs Over the Road Racing is called.
Yeah, I think it has an 8% on Metacritic, which is why it's like critically considered the worst game on Metacritic. Yeah,
it's bad because it's buggy. It's just terrible. There's misspellings in the game. Like when you win, it says you're a winner, like YOU_RE winner.
But here's the thing about that, though. I don't think people were necessarily hyped for this game or there was some sort of development story behind this game. I think it's just a bad game. And for that, I don't really want to rank it very high. I'm thinking F tier. Honestly.
F tier. I think it deserves a little bit more than F tier. And I'll tell you why.
Well, the Metacritic, maybe?
Well, the reason I think that it deserves a little bit more than F tier is because it's one of the first games I can remember becoming a meme for being bad.
Oh.
Like it sort of started this whole thing of like, oh, it's fun to make fun of bad games and it like kind of coincides with the rise of the internet, right? I mean, it's a 2003 game, so it's not like it's at the dawn of the internet or anything, but it's like the internet has really picked up steam by 2003. Like most people had access. So memes were starting to take off. This was like before memes that, in the sense that we think of them now, but in the academic sense of the word meme. This game brought into the public consciousness like the idea of a bad game that we can sit here and make fun of for being bad because it's so obviously bad to anybody watching it. And I think XPlay did a segment on it too, probably, which probably helped it there as well. Just making a meme out of how bad it is.
If it's got cultural relevance behind it,
that's what I think.
Then maybe it deserves to be in the same vein as the Zelda CDI games. It deserves to be a C.
I want to put it at B tier.
B tier? Okay, that's fine. We can do it.
Because I don't think we would be having this conversation today without this game.
Ooh, that's a good point. That makes it bigger. All right, what's the next game?
The next game is another famous bad game. One of the most famous bad games, in fact. It is E.T., the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2600.
Now, this game is got probably one of the best stories because it involves burying consoles in the desert. Yeah. And that alone makes this S tier for me personally. Yes. Like, I'm going to say this is an S tier bad game because it's so famous. It's got such a crazy story. They did bury them in the desert. It's nuts.
They made more cartridges of this than there were Atari 2600s.
Such a weird vibe. Such a weird way to do
I guess
things.
They thought that it would be a system seller. They really thought going into this like holiday season that E.T. would be the game, and they didn't really care if they had a good game or not because they thought they would just sell a bajillion copies of it. And I find it extremely interesting because it came out at a time when Atari 2600 had a lot of games coming out for it. This was like after the Activision stuff happened. So like anybody could make a game for the 2600 and it was totally like courts said, this is legal. You don't have to have Atari's permission. So there were just tons of bad games, like just awful games coming out for the 2600. And when this one came out, it was so famously bad because it was attached to like a real IP that it was just like, okay, video games are over, guys. Everything's bad. Even the game that should have been the best game is really bad. Video games are over. Stop. We're done here. And it crashed the whole industry for years.
Well, this is also the guy that programmed it, I believe, had even less time to make the game than normal. Mm-hmm. And already their development times at this part were really small. I want to say they're like 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think he did it in like 2 or 3 months. Like, it was very condensed time. So yeah, that's also a famous piece of it too. I think it goes in the S tier. Again, I don't think it matters about like the gameplay of it. I think we all know like it was famous for having like pits that you'd fall into and you can't get out of. Like, you just get like stuck. You know, that was like
it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. And maybe there are some people out there who are like, well, actually, E.T. is okay if you know how to play. And like, that's fine, but whatever.
We got it. We had a review. We have a review from an E.T. fan. I think it's funny to say that. But hey, guy that gave us the review saying our podcast didn't know what we were talking about, at least we put it in the S tier of bad games. Okay,
that's true. It is in the S tier of bad games. And you know what? If you play this game and you like it, look, hey, I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. I don't care. That's fine. But it belongs on the tier list.
And what we're saying is synonymous. Like, with most people, E.T. is considered a bad video game. That doesn't mean it's not Defenders, but with a majority of the people out there, if you have a list of bad video games, there's a good chance E.T. is going to be on it for a lot of people. So
yeah. And you could say the industry was headed for a crash anyway, and if it wasn't E.T., it would have been some other game, and you're probably right, but it was E.T., and so that's why we're talking about it.
Oh, that's embarrassing. I have a alarm going off, but it's okay. I covered it up. Ooh, we're okay.
Okay.
I got more jump scared than anything. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. So anyway, E.T., the end of the story is they made so many cartridges of them, couldn't sell them. They're in the landfill in the New Mexico desert. I think was it No Clip? It was somebody who went out there and like actually found them.
Yeah, and they dug them up.
A rumor. Yeah,
they found them. They found like buried cartridges, which is really cool. Like, I think that's a really cool thing. So actual shovelware. Actual shovelware. Yeah, perfect. So S tier for me. I strongly agree with you. It's S tier.
Awesome. Okay, next on the list, not a great story here. It's just sort of famously bad. A downfall of a beloved franchise, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5.
This is more sad to me than anything. This just bums me out.
Because for a while, the Tony Hawk series was churning out only good stuff. Like up through Underground 2, which is Tony Hawk Pro Skater, which is like the 6th game in the series. You could say all these games are legitimately good games, right?
For sure.
They start to drop off a little after that. I think maybe only the really hardcore people love like American Wasteland and Project 8 and Proving Grounds, like these other games. They sort of like had like this gradual fall off. And I think people kind of got tired of them too because they were putting them out every single year. But in, I want to say it was like 2014, they got the idea that, hey, maybe we can reboot this and bring it back. People have nostalgia for this. We never made a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. We went from 4 to Underground. Let's just bring it back to the basics. Let's make a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. And so they did. And it's just not very good. It's not very fun.
Yeah, just not a fun game. And I think
the physics are kind of weird.
This is low for me, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
I kind of want to put it in the F tier.
Me too.
Also, because you made a franchise bad that I loved. That's what upsets me the most. Because I love Tony Hawk, and it bums me out that it was that that way. But yeah, so Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, F tier it is. But the next game,
and it came out a couple of years after the first HD remake of the first 3 Tony Hawk games, or first 2 Tony Hawk games. Not the ones that came out in 2020 that were really actually really good. The ones from like 10 years before that, that were just they were not very good, and people were like, oh, that's kind of a bummer that this remake's not very good. And then they came out with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, and they were like, okay, they truly don't know what they're doing. Series is over.
Yeah, they truly do not care about Tony Hawk anymore.
Yeah.
Well, the next game is exciting.
Yes, another redemption story, and this is a personal favorite game of mine, which I am woefully behind on. Final Fantasy XIV, the first version. This game is beloved now. Everybody loves this game, and I'm actually 2 expansions behind now, which is embarrassing.
Oh man, everyone's going to talk about it.
Yeah, I gotta play these games.
We're gonna get some emails.
I need to finish Endwalker, and then of course Dawn Trail just came out a few weeks ago. Not even a few weeks ago. It's like a couple of days ago, actually, I think.
Who hasn't played Dawn Trail? You know what I mean? I've never played the game. That's not true. I did play the game. I did play it because I wanted to play it with you. And then you were like, hey, just so you know, there's going to be about 100 hours of story or something. It's like
that's a low estimate. There's so much stuff. And you can pay to skip it, but that feels bad. Anyway, we've had this conversation before. But
we have.
But the first version of Final Fantasy XIV was famously not very good. It was not very fun. Had a lot of like just anti-player things in it that were just not good. It was just, you played it and you're going, what am I doing here? This game is not very fun. But they famously took this game offline for a year, I think, while they redid everything. And they even added this into the storyline of the game, where they didn't just like take it offline and say, hey, just quick do-over. They actually destroyed the world.
That part I think is so cool. That's like so cool to me that they were like, no, we're going to blow up the whole world. Like, and that's going to be how we do this as a group.
Yeah. So you can find that video on YouTube of like the final cutscene of 1.0 before they took the servers down. And it is really cool. And they just blow up the whole world. And then they went dark for a year. And when it came back out, it was a good game. It was fun. It was great. And then every expansion that added onto it after that made it even better. And I think it's currently the best MMO out there. I like it more than World of Warcraft. It's a little bit less accessible just because of all the story stuff that you have to do. But I think the raids are really, really fun. I think the story is actually good. And so
Red Mage, right? You love Red Mage.
Red Mage, best class in any game ever. Yeah. So
where do you want to put it?
I want to put it at the A tier.
A tier, I agree. I like
alongside Cyberpunk, the other redemption story.
The redemption ones are going on the same tier. I like it. This next one I am personally experienced in, and can I bring this one in? I'm going to bring this one in.
Yeah, bring this one in.
It is Superman 64 for the Nintendo 64.
Is that actually what it's called? Because there's no title in the box.
No, it's actually, I believe it's actually, well, I have my cartridge. I can go grab it real quick. I think it's actually called Superman Returns, if I remember correctly. No, wait, hold on. Let me look it up to be sure.
Is there a title on the cartridge?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's known synonymously as like Superman 64, but yeah, it's called Superman. It's the Superman, the new Superman Adventures, not Superman Adventures, because it's based on the animated series, the new Superman Adventures.
Gotcha.
And so, but everyone calls it Superman 64. That's kind of what it's synonymously known as. The reason it's bad is because the gameplay is just bad. Like, you don't have checkpoints, so a lot of the time you're just losing your save process constantly. It's got these flying mechanics that are super hard to control. Like, I tried it. I have a cartridge of it. It just frustrated me to no end. Even with like a Brawler 64 controller, you're like, this is not fun or engaging or entertaining. Also, because you're Superman and you can't get hurt unless it's kryptonite, you're saving people and you're doing these activities, and it's just not good gameplay. It's just not good, and it doesn't really tell you what to do. It's got a lot of gameplay issues with it, which is why it's bad. But since we're not judging it on gameplay, we're not judging it on that. Meme wise, it's known as the worst N64 game. Like, yeah, very much so. But I don't think it has that much of a strong like internet story behind it, or like a development story behind it. So I don't think it should rank very high. It's kind of like C tier to me, or D tier, honestly.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. Where would you want to rank it?
I have no experience with this game. So
it's not, from what I understand, it's not like a crazy development story. It really was just like, this game is bad. And it's
just like, let's put out a Superman game and we'll give it to these team of game makers.
Yeah.
And not do a very good job.
And they just didn't turn out very well. And it's just known as being this really, really hard and punishing game.
Yeah.
So
And the graphics, like the fog, there's so much fog in it, and I think they call it like kryptonite fog or something.
Because of like trying to render things in. Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
fog of war to help you render things in. So it's or draw distance is what. So it's just not a great game. It is known as being the worst N64 game, like to a lot of people. So I don't want to put it like in the F tier, but it probably belongs in like the C tier at best.
Okay.
I would say.
All right, let's go C tier.
Yeah. This next one, though, this cover I'm unfamiliar with.
This is a 2005 game, Shadow the Hedgehog.
Oh.
Which we don't have to talk about it for very long. They tried to, because Shadow the Hedgehog is like the hedgehog that was introduced in Sonic Adventure 2 as like sort of the anti-Sonic, like the even cooler, more edgy version of Sonic, which Sonic he's originally was already cool, the cool guy, right?
He likes chili dogs.
Yeah. So you've got like this like hedgehog that just he's got like hover skates and he shoots guns in this game. And he has like a really dark and mysterious past and it's just like anime protagonist stuff,
Second Amendment Sonic coming at you is what's happening.
Yes. Yeah. So he got his own game. He was kind of a fan favorite after Sonic Adventure 2. And I know not everybody loves that game and your criticisms are valid. I've had a lot of fun with that game. But he got his own game and then people were excited for it. And then it was like, what is this like weird crossover between like sort of a third person shooter with like this more classic 3D Sonic gameplay from Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. And it had like these branching paths of like the good version, the evil version, or the neutral version. But it just wasn't very good. But it's just sort of funny because of the memes that come out of it of Shadow being the edgy sad boy. They come from this game mostly. Which is just funny. So I'm going to put it in the D tier because it doesn't have much else to it than that. I just think it's funny.
Okay, cool.
I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. The next one's also kind of funny. It's why we just talk about it. The next one's Shaq Fu. And Shaq Fu is just one of those games where you learn about this and you're like, they made this? And then you kind of go down a little rabbit hole looking into it. And it's just exciting. And it's like very much a part of like the culture. If you're like I feel like Shaquille O'Neal acknowledges the game and how ridiculous it is. So
yeah, do you know what the story is here? Of like, was it like they went to Shaq and were like, we want to make a game, and he was like, okay.
I don't really know the story behind it that much. I don't know like what it is. I just know that like in interviews, Shaquille O'Neal's like talked about it and acknowledged it, and so it's like, I don't know. I want to put it in like B or A tier just because it's so silly. It's just such a silly premise. We're gonna take a sports legend and we're gonna put him in a fighting game. It's completely different than what he does. Like,
Yeah.
Do you think it would be like Shaquille O'Neal, NBA court basketball, 2000 whatever? But it's like, or I guess 1990s whatever. But instead, it's like a kung fu game.
Yeah, they must have. Yeah, that's so weird. Maybe they had this game that they made and they're like, this game's not that great. Do we have access to some sort of license we can slap on it that like maybe we'll make it sell something? And they were like, yeah, weirdly through this one deal we did a couple of years ago with Shaquille O'Neal, we actually have the video game rights to his likeness, and that he signed away for $20 because he didn't care.
It's just such a weird combo, but it's a great combo that I want to put it at like B tier. Okay. That's how I kind of feel about it. Because if someone
bad, have you played it?
I've never played it. I've never played it. I just know if someone mentions Shaq Fu to me, I'm like, okay, that's like a deep in a video game pull, and I want to talk to you about it now.
Yeah, and they're probably like, hey, here's a bunch of money, and he was like, sure, I'll take your money, I guess. I don't care.
It might deserve an episode. It probably deserves an episode.
Okay,
and I would play Shaq Fu for the podcast.
All right, because I heard it here first. Shaq Fu episode incoming.
Shaq Fu episode inbound. Okay. What's this next game?
Our last game to talk about, we have one more bonus thing after that, is the classic. These are all classics, but this one, Night Trap.
Oh, yeah. Started the panic.
Yes. Or contributed heavily to the panic in the mid 90s of like, oh no, video games are going to destroy our children. Because it was full motion video on the Sega CD. And it was like live action stuff and like violence and stuff like that. But the game is just not very good.
Yeah, I think what we should do is I think the historical significance of it puts it up high.
Yeah, I agree.
So I mean, this is gonna be kind of a wild card pick. I want to put it in the A tier because I know it's like a historically significant game, and it's a game that Limited Run Games had a hard copy of this at a PAX, I want to say in like 2019, and they sold out of it. Like, it's a game that people like want to buy, even though
Yeah,
it's
it's been
not great.
remastered now as well. I
Yeah.
think it holds up a little better under the remasteredness, but mostly people play it for the memes because it was like they're all mad about this specific game, and the game is bad, and nobody even plays this game. It's for a peripheral that did not sell very well, and probably the fact that they talked about it so much is why we're even talking about it today. Like it wouldn't have sold anything, and we wouldn't be talking about it at all if they hadn't made such a big deal out of it in the 90s. The lawyers and the Jack Thompsons of the world, if they hadn't made such a big deal out of it, the Streisand effect, right?
Yeah, exactly. They made it really famous, but
Yeah,
it's popular now. Man, I feel like I have a glaring. We might see a Shaq Fu episode sooner than later. Is what I'm saying. The more I think about Shaq Fu, the more I'm like, I should know more about this game, and I think I'm going to go down a rabbit hole this week.
Let's do it.
We might have Shaq Fu next week, is what I'm trying to say. We're done with Lego games, so it's like we might jump into Shaq Fu. So a little spoiler for you. Oh, actually, no, we don't have that next week because we have an interview next week.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we'll do that, and then we'll have Shaq Fu. So real highbrow interview followed by Shaq Fu. Well, this bonus that you have for us today, I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, not a game, a piece of hardware. One of Nintendo's famous flops, the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, and I think because it's a Nintendo flop, that makes it bigger because Nintendo didn't have a ton of flops.
Yeah, that makes it worth talking about.
And it's a bigger flop than like the Wii U, which is in some people's eyes is like one of their worst flops, right? So I don't know where I would rank it. Is my only thing about it because it's got a legend to it now. It's got people on YouTube modding them. Like there's a modding community around it. I've seen people mod them on YouTube to try to like make them better.
to do what?
To make you like
there's
not
like
feel
10
sick.
games for it.
To like make you not feel sick. Like to try to like make it work better. I don't know. It's people are tinkering with it is my point.
Okay.
And so I think in that sense it shouldn't be like F or D. I think it kind of lies in the middle. But what do you think?
I'll give it a C tier, mostly because, like you said, this is sort of famously like one of Nintendo's few flops. And you had stuff like the Wii U, which didn't sell very well. They've had things that didn't sell very well, but I don't think there's anybody out here who will look at the Wii U and go, "That's a bad console. There are no good games for it," right? Because most of the games, or a lot of the games that are on Switch now that are good, were Wii U games. So it's just the Wii U was just like a mix of reasons why it didn't do very well, but like it as a product, it was fine. The Virtual Boy. I want to say it had 13 games maybe in Japan, maybe probably fewer in the US. It made people sick. The controller is not good, and none of the games are good.
Yeah,
some of them are acceptable, like passing, right? But none of them are good. There was no reason to like, oh, you got to get a Virtual Boy so you can play Mario Tennis, right? There wasn't anything.
Now I'm gonna feel silly, by the way, because I swear I saw someone modding one of these on YouTube. It's probably just like one guy, and I'm like, everyone's modding it.
Yeah, they did put some of these games out on the 3DS, or maybe I'm just thinking of like an emulator that exists for the 3DS that's not like official. That's kind of cool because the 3DS can actually do the 3D effect that it did. But it was I don't want to say it was ahead of its time because it was not very impressive technologically. But it was kind of a neat idea of this, like showing your eyes two different images so that you could sort of get a 3D effect. But it only had one color, red, and people's eyes, like you would play it for so long that you couldn't see red for a few hours afterwards. It just like made your receptors in your eye tired.
You get headaches.
Yep. So yeah, and there was just and nobody wanted to play it for hours anyway because there was no game. Ain't got no games. Gotta have good games.
You gotta have good games. It was kind of like a novelty thing almost in a way. Like, oh, look at this weird thing I have. It's just like kind of like when you have a weird, like as a kid and you get like a weird toy. You're like, this isn't normal, Yeah.
And it ran on batteries, but they didn't last very long. And it was not very portable because it was actually kind of big. It didn't strap to your face, but it sat on a table.
And you had to like lean into
face up to it. So it was technically portable, as in it didn't require to be hooked into a wall, so you could carry it somewhere. But it was so big that was not very practical, and the batteries didn't last very long. So it was just like who is this for? Why would anybody buy this? And of course, nobody did.
Yeah. So in that sense, I think putting it at like C is a fair assessment. Then. So
all right, and that makes our C tier the biggest.
That's okay. I mean, well, what do you think? Do you think it should go higher?
No, I think it's fine. I like it.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, do you want me to go through them real quick? I can
Sure.
go through them. I can try here. So F tier, we got Bomberman.
Act 0.
Act 0. We got Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. And then we got in the D tier, we got Atari 2600 Pac-Man, Hotel Mario, Suicide Squad, and then Shadow the Hedgehog, correct? And then we have in C, we have Sonic the Hedgehog. That was the not the reboot, but the 2000. What year was it? 2006. Yeah. We got the 2 Zelda games for CDI. We got N64's Superman 64, and then we have the Virtual Boy. In the B tier, we have the Duke Nukem games. We put both of them in there, but they're the same game. One was the one it was supposed to be, and they didn't.
Yeah, it's just different covers.
Yeah, Duke Nukem Forever, different covers. Big Rig was it Over the Road? Is what it's called, Over the Road Racing. And then Shaq Fu. In the A tier, we have Cyberpunk, Final Fantasy 14, and Night Trap. And in the S tier, we have Daikatana and E.T. Again, as far as the stories of these bad games go, I do think Daikatana and E.T. are up there.
Yeah,
with how bad their development story is. I agree with you. And the hubris, as we said before. So that's our list, though. That's it. We did it today.
And if you have comments, questions, you think we missed something, you want to defend ET, send us an email.
codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, or go to codexpodcast.net and send us a contact form email, or join our Discord and go there. There's a lot of different things you can do. There's so many things you can do. So with that, I think that's going to be it for the day, though. Tyler, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
I do want to say goodbye to everybody. Goodbye, everybody.